Please welcome the former governor of Alaska and our friend, Sarah Palin!
RightOnline, I thank you for the invitation, and Americans for Prosperity, thank you for hosting this very, very important conference. I tell you, it's going to be nice to share with you all tonight and express my appreciation for you all being on the front lines there in the battle for the future of our country. You're doing such a good job. You independent, conservative, new media activists who can really be the vanguard for the future of our country, for the movement that our country is dependent upon, the movement that finally defends our republic and fundamentally restores all that is good and prosperous and free and safe and exceptional about America. You are doing that work because to the town halls, to the ballot boxes, and the debates on Capitol Hill. New media is giving voice to the people because you are of the people and you are leading the charge. Without you, there probably wouldn't be a Tea Party movement. Thus, no 2010 electoral victory. Thus, no hope for victory in 2012. And this month we gained another victory. This time it was in Wisconsin. I think it's fitting that the last Americans for Prosperity event that I participated in, it was with Andrew, and it was in Wisconsin. It was late 2011, and Andrew and I were speaking in Wisconsin when the radical left had surrounded us, and they had targeted that good state as their line in the sand, and they were against, of course, the responsible fiscal reform that we were for. Then it seemed that few people were willing to wade into that mess of community organizing, but we were there. You were there. Andrew Breitbart was there. We were there. We happy few, we band of brothers, we were there. We were there that day, remember, in the blowing snow and the frozen rain that was pelting those Capitol steps. I felt right at home. We were there to plant the flag and to hold the hilltop. And that left-wing mob that had surrounded us with shouts and curses, and they came to intimidate. They had their drum circles, and they had their bullhorns, and they had their cowbells. Oh, the cowbells, that was so intimidating. Breitbart told them, as only Breitbart could, as Tim suggested. Breitbart said, go to Hades, he yelled out to the crowd of protesters. And I told the good people of Wisconsin that day that we would take the courage and the integrity that they showed the rest of America, and we would win our country back with what they were showing the rest of America. It's said that defeat is an orphan and victory has 1,000 fathers. Well, the father of this month's victory in Wisconsin was you. New media, the Tea Party. It was your victory, though we, band of brothers, we do live out Ronald Reagan's belief that there is no limit to what can be accomplished when we don't care who gets the credit. You stood by the electoral mandate, though, that you fought so hard for. Remember, while we were in Wisconsin defending tough, needed fiscal reform, some back in the establishment in D.C., they were already walking back their promises to cut $100 billion from the deficit. Remember that? It's quite typical. The permanent political class broke promises that they never intended to keep. But you stood by a governor who was bound and determined to keep his promises to the people people who hired him to do the job. And you show DC what having a spy looks like. Or as I said, I said, you showed them how to fight like a girl. The role of new media, it goes beyond just merely organizing. It's more fundamental than that. New media has become a force for activism and for information. You fill a vital role because you do what too many in the old media won't do, can't do, and that's tell the truth. And I've learned this in the last 4 years or so, is it really doesn't do any good to personally complain about what the ramifications are because of the untruths told by the old media. You know, I think the circumstances that they create when they lie, well, might as well save my breath, because think about it, 50% of the people whom you would complain to, they're busy with their own problems. And the other 50%, they're glad you have the problems. So you can save your breath, but these mainstream media lies, though, what they do, according to news reports over these years, shoot, by now I guess I should have been divorced how many times? And under FBI investigation, and living in Montana, or the Hamptons. Lately it's been the Hamptons, and it is still a great mystery. Who really is Trig Paxton Van Palen's real mother? And according to them, in my spare time, I burn books and I shoot wolves from the skids of helicopters. That's why I keep telling them quit making things up. Isn't it any wonder why they are tough to believe and trust? Now, when some of the old media aren't outright lying, they are lying by omission. And Breitbart called them the Democrat media complex. The new media rose up precisely because the old media failed to tell the truth. It was from that very first new media breakthrough, it was about 15 years ago, when just this lowly little store clerk in a lowly little apartment is equipped with his computer and a modem. Well, he wrote one of the biggest stories of the decade. His name was Matt Drudge. And the rest is history. In hindsight, we see that the story that he wrote, it was more than just a president having an affair. To me, it was much, much more than that. It was about a major old media publication that had spiked the story 11 times. And they knew all about it. 11 times, not just once to check their facts, not twice to double check, but 11 times they spiked the stories. Why? Because as charter members of that Democrat media complex, they were protecting their guy. So when a fellow with a modem and a website found out about this, he decided to tell the truth that they refused to tell. And oh, how that old media cried foul, and they howled. They denounced Drudge as irresponsible and unprofessional and even dangerous and anti-everything from motherhood to apple pie. Yeah. How dare that nobody from nowhere without a degree or a pedigree, how dare he try to influence the national discourse? But the real reason they feared him was because he was not beholden to the old media's machine and the thought police. Unshackled, he was free. And a few months later, Drudge got to speak at the National Press Club in D.C. He predicted the future in his speech there. He said, "We have entered an era vibrating with the din of small voices. Every citizen can be a reporter, can take on the powers that be. I envision a future where there will be 300 million reporters, where anyone from anywhere can report for any reason. It's freedom of participation absolutely realized. Thus the birth of citizen journalism. And you are the future that he predicted." Columbia's Grad School of Journalism. But hey, that bachelor's of science, a science from the University were numbered if it didn't adapt to the public's demands for fairness and for honesty. Alas, they did not listen. And in the years since, haven't we seen one old media giant after another go broke and just barely hang on to relevancy? But they had their chance. They made their choice. And then in a speech 12 years later, Breitbart, he repeated that same warning. He said to the old media, he put it more bluntly, Olive Breitbart, can't repeat what he said in case the kids are listening tonight, but it was something about it not being their business model that sucked. It was, you can imagine what Breitbart said. And note, we mustn't blanket everyone in their industry with this generalization and indisputable observation, though, of what's going on, because I know that there are some good reporters out there. I know all two of them, and they, in their own way, in the arena, in their own diplomatic and ethical way, they're trying to affect positive change. They're not into the spin, and they're not in it to deceive, and they're not wanting to put anyone up on a pedestal who would seek to be prince of make crap up a stand. They want. There's a couple of them out there, but look what the old media did, though, in general. What the old media did in that 2008 campaign, it was the final straw. Then candidate Obama used new social media effectively to organize. But ironically, he's a creature of the old media. They're the ones who propped him up and spun for him and refused to vet him. And with tingles up their legs, they delivered for their chosen one the victory. During that campaign, the same media that reported breathlessly about a minor candidate and irrelevant candidate's wardrobe couldn't be bothered with the future leader of the Free World's associations, his pals, his voting record as a state senator, the statements that he had made in the past. If the media had done their job, we would have known, despite Barack Obama really mocking the Clintons and condemning Hillary's healthcare plan, we would have known that his own plan was going to be based on an unconstitutional mandate that has resulted in these years of uncertainty and of agony. We would have known, had the media done its job, of his strange attraction to the most leftist, radical of leftist ideas, leading to his governance by intrusion in all aspects of our commercial and private life, all the way up to his war on religion. And we'd have known that he actively and proudly sought out Marxist professors and was actually a member of the Socialist Now Party when he ran for state office in the 90s. Now, these same scummed media characters that made such a big darn deal out of their 2008 investigation, they could have just asked, but no, it was an investigation to prove that my husband wasn't and still isn't registered in the Republican Party. He had been registered as an independent. Same media. Well, Todd sure as heck never registered as a socialist. Now, had voters known, they wouldn't be surprised that our now president thinks the government has the right to redistribute the fruits of your labor. And in the middle of the worst recession of our lifetime, he would be one to proclaim that the private sector is doing just fine. He doesn't understand the private sector, perhaps because he doesn't believe in the private sector. Yes. Now, if the media had done the job, we'd not be surprised that the White House, the people's house, yes, the White House, can you imagine a governor saying, well, in my state capitol building? Can you imagine a mayor saying, in my city hall? We have a president saying, in my White House, but no, only in Chicago would you hear maybe a mayor saying that. Washington too, they talk a lot about polls. There are a lot of polls in Vegas. In their recent reports, especially because the figures involved in those polls are usually augmented too. But that's what they're doing to prop up those polls right now with these national security leaks, trying to make them sound like the tough guy. We have known too, had the media done the job, we have known that the plan from the beginning was to run up these trillion-dollar deficits and, budgets be darned. No need for a blueprint, I guess. We're going to go 4 years here now without a plan for our federal government. Still, no budget in our federal government. Well, the plan, though, evidently being running up these mind-boggling deficits to pay out public sector cronies with make work not really shovel-ready after all, stimulus jobs that will be paid for by your children and their children and their children. And we have known of these associations with anti-American intellectuals, and then not be surprised at his desire to apologize for America to foreign dictators, or that he is the first American president in our history to not believe that we are an exceptional nation.
Yes.
And perhaps we wouldn't have been surprised had the media dug into some of his past positions and statements on energy. Here we have such an opportunity to become energy independent because just dumped underfoot in each one of our states. God has just blessed us so much with these natural resources. We're not becoming more independent of these foreign dictators who we would bow to and beg them and subsidize them to drill for energy sources that we have here. Perhaps we wouldn't be surprised. No, they didn't do their job. The media did not do the job. But say for the sake of argument that they couldn't afford to do the job. They couldn't afford to send reporters to Chicago to research a candidate's record because, say, they spent all their money in Wasilla. And all the groups, they were going to find out what kind of coffee Bristol really ordered when she was 17, So for the sake of argument, say they ran out of money. Why at least did they not read his autobiography? Circus gives me a hard time for eating elk and moose. But come on, there's a difference. Anybody here have a pet moose? There's a difference. Followers would have revealed a lot, because they didn't do their job, though. I tell you, it falls on you. Independent, conservative, new media activists, you are an army of Davids against this Goliath of the old media that still wants to deceive. They who would trample on our First Amendment right, our right to freedom of the press, that freedom that our sons and daughters go to war and are willing to die for, defending for us. Their sacrifice, don't let our First Amendment freedoms be exploited and abused and just can get us through upcoming crisis. And it was Abraham Lincoln who said, I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts. And that is your calling, that is your charge. You have heard that in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Well, we are in a political culture of universal deceit. For years, politicians haven't really told us the truth about the state of our union. The press has covered for them, and we have been kidding ourselves. But the truth catches up. And the austerity riots in Europe today that we see reveal what happens when truth catches up. They're learning the hard way what Thatcher warned, that the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. In fact, somebody cut and pasted a tweet from me that they found the other day. John Hayward tweeted, "Dear socialist world, you run out of our money. Love other people. CC Margaret Thatcher." For all via fairness. A socialist utopia where work is almost an option and not an obligation. Government will take care of you. Well, this was too good to be true because it's not true. And now the lies are exposed, the debt is due, and there are riots in the street. This is our cautionary tale because we're even more broke than they are. As Mark Stein says, we're the brokest nation in history.
Yes.
Our politicians have been telling our esteemed senior citizens that the money that they've invested in our government, that they paid into Social Security all their adult lives, all those funds having wisely been invested by the government, they'll be there once you retire, sure, but no, those funds have been raided year after year. Social Security is broke. Medicare is broke. Our politicians, every campaign, they dodge the specific questions about deficit spending and what they want to cut and entitlement reform that's so necessary. They must know that we're broke and that we're accumulating $4 billion in debt every day. That's $3 million a minute, and yet they must realize this, but they don't seem to want to fix it. Last summer, our nation's credit rating downgraded for the first time in history, and there was a general agreement at the time, was there not, that, okay, we're in a debt crisis and we can't ignore this any longer. But right at that moment, what happened? Right at that moment, the media complex, they changed the subject, they changed the conversation, right underneath us. And the masters of distraction changed the subject to this pivot from national dialogue being necessary to debt reduction to all of a sudden class warfare based on what really was under the guise of politicians' subjective definition of fairness. And then we see another shift recently, this enabling and encouraging or promising young people that they can just sign on the dotted line and take all those college loan dollars that are available, take all that you can get, saddle up and saddle yourself with $100,000 in college debt for a degree in, say, post-structural feminist, neo-colonial, underwater masculinity, because the job market is so ripe for that. Don't worry about the future, kids. Just have fun. There's always fun, employment. So now we have a generation, folks, that's shackled with lifetime debt and often with useless degrees. And how fair is that to perpetuate that deception? I want to warn young adults. Oh, they have to be warned. Tonight, you're going to watch a new documentary. It's going to blow you away. It will reveal how the media does change the conversation. This film called Occupy Unmasked. It's Andrew's last earthly effort to break through the massive lie known as the Occupy movement. It exposes this fraud that is abetted by the mainstream media. And you're going to find out this wasn't a movement that was organized like the Tea Party was by average patriots who were just concerned about their country. It was organized by violent, radical, left-wing anarchists who decide that our free market system must be overthrown. And you don't have to take my word for it. They speak quite candidly about this themselves. You'll see footage of occupiers throwing Molotov cocktails and roving bands of occupied thugs destroying private property and terrorizing neighborhoods. You'll learn of an epidemic of rape in occupied camps, which some, I guess, refer to as freedom of expression. And you'll see with horror the violent forces our community organizer-in-chief has unleashed on America. See, President Barack Obama and the Democrat media complex, they have embraced the Occupy movement, yes?
Yes.
And you're going to see that they, having blessed it early on, you're going to see what they blessed. Keep in mind, they denounced the Tea Party movement, which has been one of the most peaceful, patriotic, diverse, independent grassroots movements. Outrage with a twinge of sadness, though. Outrage at the violence and at the media for lying about it all because they were participants in it. We wouldn't have this footage, by the way, were it not for the new media activists unmasking the truth. Sadness too, though, because it is a sad day when such a thing goes on in this America that we so love. Sad that young people who are so in debt turn to this movement because their professors taught them that America is the root of all evil, and yes, that free market system is unfair, thus must be overthrown. Unfortunately, granted, crony capitalism on both sides of the aisle makes us a bit more vulnerable to some of the criticisms. But now, if you think about it, we have this growing class full of angry, unemployed, idle hands with heads full of Marxist lies. Who's going to tell them the truth? We have to tell them the truth. If we don't tell them the truth, then our country fails. We must succeed in this, and we will succeed in this. We'll reach them through the media, and through politics, and through pop culture. Pop culture, where we shouldn't be afraid to get out there, quit preaching to the choir, but get out there and be influencers, right? Upstream of politics. Again, don't be afraid to be out there participating. It's not selling out, it's infiltrating. You know, I told my daughter Bristol that, and she got a call from Dancing with the Stars asking, hey, you want to be on the show? And she's like, Mom, I told the producers, well, I don't dance and I'm not a star, so sure, I'll be on your show. And I said, well, Bristol, oh my gosh, wait for the criticism, you know, geez, you're a Palin. I said, the criticism's going to be rough. And she says, exactly, Mom, the haters are going to hate, the critics are going to criticize, so I might as well dance. Trying to influence for good in culture. Now, a word of warning, though. Okay, whatever the outcome is in November, please do not get co-opted by the permanent political class. Granted, you will not make many friends in the Beltway or in Hollywood. HBO, oh, they're going to do what they got to do against you. You won't be one of the cool kids. Doggone it. Sometimes you'll find yourself under the bus. But you need to stay outside of the machine. Sometimes you got to rage against it. Stay outside of the political establishments in order to hold them accountable. And just tell the truth. Don't spin GOP failures the same way that the left does for President Obama. And Nancy Pelosi. And then, in our hoped for, prayed for, worked very hard for, and predicted victory this fall, then we have to make sure that we don't go back to saying, well, right on, our team's got the ball, so we get to ignore now what everybody's doing. No, our nation can no longer afford partisan apathy. Please stay ever vigilant, holding feet to the fire. And we shall. We'll succeed in this. You probably heard this, what success is. Success is preparation meeting opportunity. Okay, when they meet, you will succeed. And for such a time as this, you have both. Be confident that you are prepared, and certainly you recognize this gift you're given, this opportunity, this time in our nation's history. So we'll have preparation, meeting opportunity. We'll succeed in this mission. And I say we because I consider myself part of you, part of this movement. I know that without social media, oh, my platform would be so narrow. It would be so much shakier and more narrow as I would try to maneuver a constitutional conservative, very traditional, very common, sensible platform and message through the filter of the old media. So I proudly consider myself a part of this movement, and I just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for what it is that you do in trying to correct the untruths and trying to get what the real story and the real message and somebody's real record is actually all about. I know that many of you independents, you've had my back, and I can't tell you how grateful my family and I are for your efforts. And we need to have each other's back. We must have each other's back. Because the larger the target you become for the left. Breitbart understood this as they tried to bankrupt him and his family. And I've been there, and I know that many of you know that. The politics of personal destruction that they choose to play, you're going to hear from Michelle Malkin in this conference, and look at the harassment that she goes through. And, I think, do they really think that that little nightgown mama grizzly is just going to go hibernate in some den somewhere? Look at the big kahuna, kind of the fearless leader of some of us ditto heads, Rush Limbaugh. Look what they try to do here. With he being the center of these massive campaigns to try to silence him. And I think of Rush when my girls and I were trucking down the road in our truck and radio's blasting and Kelly Clarkson's song comes on, and I think of Rush when it says, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." And I think these yahoos out there doing all that they can to try to get Rush to sit down and shut up, they're making his point every day with the double standards and the hypocrisy, and he just comes back stronger and stronger and more credible because they make his point for him. What a gig he's got. These are futile efforts, though, to get constitutional conservatives to sit down and shut up. And I know that some of you bloggers, especially recently, experiencing terrible harassment just because you dared report accurately about a convicted criminal who's now funded by left-wing organizations. And you're not alone, and the swatting must stop, and those responsible for the swatting must be held accountable by the law. So friends, this evening, as we honor Andrew Breitbart, remember that his greatest gift that he left for us was his fearlessness. And I would hope that even tonight, and even through this conference, that you would be able to reload with that inspiration of his fearlessness. Be out there and stand your ground, and others will stand with you. Courage inspires courage, and victory begets victory. So let's be bold and courageous to win our country back. We can do it because we have the time-tested truths on our side, and we will do whatever it takes to defend those truths. We will defeat that Goliath of the old media that still seeks to deceive this most exceptional nation. So don't retreat. Reload with that